So our neck has one final top coat of finish after a pretty thorough level sand. And you can see we have really good gloss, few white marks, but it's not really that bad. And transition between the headstock and playing surface is really smooth and nice. I think this is kind of ready to go. This is done. I've let this dry for 2 days-ish, and now I'm ready to kind of move on and start to finish the neck off and install the hardware. So the first thing that I need to do is clean up the edge of the fretboard. So where the tape went down, there's kind of a sharp line that I'll need to sand off. I'll probably just take some 800 grit sandpaper with this eraser as a block and kind of follow the angle of these fret ends and just kind of knock that hard edge off and maybe even roll off a little bit of the wood so that it feels nice in the hand. Once that's done, there's a couple of places on the fretboard you can see, especially here and here around the 12th fret, where some oil actually built up on the surface. I don't know if you can see that, as well as got on the frets just a little. So I'm going to be cleaning that off with a combination of just sanding the surface of the wood and also with some of this mineral spirit in a cloth. And the rest of this stuff, you can see these ugly marks, is where the tape adhesive kind of got into the wood. I'll clean the whole thing with more mineral spirit until this is really nice and kind of finished, ready to go. After that, we'll move on to installing the truss rod nut cover. So there's a little cover that'll go here. We'll have to drill and put that in, and then we'll install the tuners, and we'll have a finished neck. And it looks fantastic. So I guess I'll get started on cleaning it up now. So again, just going to take an eraser with this 800 grit sandpaper, and I'll hold this so that you can kind of see, but basically like these fret ends are nicely dressed and have an angle. And I'm just going to kind of match that angle and sort of just roll off, try to sand that edge. And I'll do that along the whole thing, and I'll go up and down, kind of double check it, and eventually probably kind of roll over the edge just a little bit like that until all that stuff's knocked down. So keep doing that. Want to go pretty delicately, so I'll take my time, show you what that looks like when I'm done. The edge of the fretboard is cleaned up and like rolled just a little bit. I forgot to mention also, you really want to be sanding with the grain of the fretboard anytime you're down on this surface, so careful. There's still a few areas where when I run my fingers along it, I can feel that there's a little bit of oil that got into the wood on the fretboard, so I'm probably gonna have to sand some of those areas like a little bit more intensely. But first, I'm gonna clean up as much residue as I can so that I can see where those are, and maybe even soften up the finish that got in there a little bit. So I've just got some mineral spirits and a cloth, and I really don't want to soak anything, you know. Having too much of this stuff like get down into the glue or something with the frets might not be good, but we'll just sort of clean all that tape residue off, all the dust from what we just did. This might help to take off some of the finish that might have gotten on the metal part of the fret, just kind of the scrubbing with the solvent on it. And I'll clean the fretboard like this, give it a couple of passes, and then go back to sand the rest of those. We'll be ready to move on. With this all clean, you can see that a lot of the gross looking stuff on there was just the adhesive, but there are a couple of places where some oil really seeped under. Like I can see just a tad bit reflecting right there, and especially that 12th fret, if you see it, you see those lines. So I'm just gonna sand those areas again, a little bit more intensely. I want to be really careful, you know, even though this is 800 grit that I'm using, like digging into those that I don't mess up that playing surface, because you don't want to affect the radius of it at all. You want it to basically stay flat as much as you can, stay rounded the way that it is, with no appreciable dip. But if you just see that I've got that spot there on the 12th, I'm just going to go ahead and, I guess I'll hold it like this. A little difficult to do with the camera. Just start to really work on that area, going with the grain of the wood, and trying to keep a flat surface with the rest of the fret. And I'll actually kind of periodically go over the whole area there. And I'll keep doing that until I don't really see such a strong outline anymore. And we've gotten most of that finish off to where it won't be really visibly obvious playing the guitar. And I'll get this one next to it too. And I'll clean it up again. And after a couple of passes cleaning up, the sort of yucky spots where there was finish on the fretboard are gone. And this thing is clean and ready. I did end up kind of scuffing up the surface of some of the frets in the process of cleaning this off and sort of sanding without guarding them. You can guard them to try and keep them nice, but this might need to have fretwork done anyway, and at a minimum, I'm going to polish them as part of setting it up, so kind of no big deal, in my opinion. So we're going to move on to the truss rod cover, and that's going to be a little triangular piece with 3 screws. I'm going to go ahead and set up my drill for that and mark it. Then I'll show installing that next. So I put the truss rod cover down and centered it nicely here. Before I drill this, I've got my bit selected. I've got a depth stop to match the depth of the screw so that I don't accidentally punch through the neck and come out the backside, which would be very bad. But before I do this, you know, the way that these are made is they make an angled cut and flip the piece around and do what's called a scarf joint. And these can be a little bit delicate. So I really don't want to apply like a ton of downward pressure on this when I'm drilling. So I'm actually going to brace this so that the other side is supported a little bit with my hand and do this really, really carefully. Yep. So with that drilled out, should be good to get that ready for the screws. And just have a little Phillips head screwdriver. Dip these in some wax so they'll come in and out easily. And I'll screw it in. And we have the truss rod cover done. The tuners on this guitar are going to be more of these vintage, like Clusen type. I guess these are from Goto. And basically the way these will work is we have a bushing that I'm going to drive in from the front of the guitar. And then once that's in, the tuners will poke through from the back like this, and we'll screw them in. To get the bushings to go into these holes, I'm going to start by widening them out a little bit. So I actually have a reamer here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this to ream out the holes, again being really careful not to put too much pressure when pushing on this. Make sure I'm supporting it. And then after I finish that, I'll probably go back to the old dowel with sandpaper trick to just keep widening these out a little bit until I can get like a finger tight, like till I can kind of get this halfway pushed in just by hand. And then after that, I'm going to drive it home with these channel locks. I'll show you that. So as far as reaming these goes, just being really careful not to scratch up the finish. I'm going to go ahead and just try to ream these holes out a little bit, widen them. And see if we can't get that opening wide enough to where I can kind of tell that this can insert just a little bit by hand. So I'll keep doing that, then I'll move on to widen with the dowel. Yeah, so you can see after reaming this, I can take this insert, and now I can kind of test fit it in just a little bit. And I'm going to widen the hole a little bit down below with this dowel before I keep going. So I'll probably just take some 220 grit sandpaper, do that little wrap trick, and then bore it out a little. Yeah, so just bore these out a little more on the inside with a tightly wrapped dowel, the sandpaper. And again, I just want to minimize the amount of pressure and force that I need to use to drive that in. You still want it to be a very snug fit. Like, you don't want this to be loose at all. But just to kind of clear it a little bit so that I don't end up cracking the finish, cracking the wood, something like that. And I'll bore that out. We'll move on to the hard part of driving it in just a second. to drive these all the way in with the hole adjusted, I'm going to take this old ID card and then put that over the insert so that when the channel locks touch the insert, we don't scrape any of the black off of it or anything, or bend the shape. And then I'll also have this block, which will butt up against the back. And you have to be really careful doing this because it takes quite a bit of force to actually get it to go. And if you don't do it right, you could end up driving this in at an angle, or the tool could slip and crush into the wood. Last time I did this, I had kind of the inner part of the channel lock come and sort of gouge the edge of the headstock there. So I'm going to try and do this very carefully. It's a little bit tricky to film. Forgive me if the camera angle is bad. We'll see what we can do. So, got like that. I need to unlock that a little. Yeah. And we'll just try to drive that in. I'm going to really, really carefully watch as it goes, because I don't want to put any extra pressure. Don't want to break anything. So that's going in on an angle, you see. So I'm going to pull that back out and widen the hole just a little bit more. Got some pliers that I'll use. Just want to be really, really careful not to mess this up. Driving this in can be difficult. There we go. So you see it's driving in nice and straight this time. I'm just going to readjust this block. Just keep squeezing. Tighten this up one. Not easy to do while filming either, I'll tell you. There we go. So that's flush. Boy, what a hassle to do that while filming. And we've got one insert in, 5 more to go, and we'll come back and show drilling and installing the actual tuning machines next. With the inserts all seated in the front, we can actually put the tuners on. You can see that the tuner at the very front and the very back are shaped slightly differently, so they have this like part that sticks out. And then the rest of the ones in the middle you can see kind of locked together, and they'll share a single mounting screw. So I've got a straight edge right here, and basically we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes to drill. I'm gonna just line them up, make sure they're nice and straight and like seated correctly. And then I'll go through and I'll make a dot with this ultra fine Sharpie marker where each screw should go. Then I'm gonna pull them out and we'll drill them and we'll put them in. We've got a depth stop set and a little tiny 1/16 of an inch drill bit. And again, I want to be really careful not to put too much weird pressure on this. So I've got this kind of mounted where I can grip it. And we're going to let the drill bit do as much of the work as we can. Just kind of gently drill these in. We'll do all of them just like that, screw it all together. And all drilled out, just go ahead and dip and screw all of these bad boys in. So while I was putting in the very last screw on this bottom tuner, unfortunately, because this screw and this tuner lines up so close to the edge of the headstock, you can see there's a slight crack that started to form. And the finish actually is cracked a little bit further than I think the wood is. So to try and mitigate that, I have this like super thin super glue. This is like CA glue. And I've got this little kind of like needly wick cap. And I'm going to try to just put a little bit of that in and like wick it into that crack and see if I can just get a little bit of a kind of glue bond going in there just to keep it from spreading or anything like that. And I'll really quickly, the minute it's kind of gotten into the crack, just wipe like crazy with this so we don't get it on any of the finish portion. And actually, get rid of this. Use only this guy. So, yep, very last thing I want to do. Quite unfortunate, but shouldn't be that bad. We'll just try to wick that in. Hopefully like capillary action type of stuff will happen here. Just kind of pull that in. You can see I kind of just got a little bit into that crack. And hopefully that'll stop that from spreading, especially once we actually put string tension on this and it's getting pulled. So, hope that's good. Besides that, the neck looks great. Feels great too. So next update will be putting it onto the body after the super glue dries. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, stay tuned.